State and city officials on Thursday announced their most dramatic steps yet in the effort to contain the rapidly spreading coronavirus in Illinois, banning gatherings of more than 1,000 people for the next 30 days while assuring parents that most schools would remain open for the time being.
The new measures will drastically alter Chicagoans' social and cultural lives at the very moment they could most use some distractions. Most major sporting events, concerts and rallies shut down just as spring arrives. Gov. J.B. Pritzker said he has asked professional sports teams to cancel all of their games or play without spectators until May 1, and they've agreed.
Chicago public schools will remain open. City and state officials are not recommending school be canceled, but said local districts should develop their own guidance. Some suburban districts already have closed buildings and turned to online learning.
In addition to a ban on large-scale events, Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot urged organizers of public and private events expected to draw more than 250 people to postpone them until May 1 as the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the state climbed. With the diagnosis of 7 new patients, including the first child in Illinois, the total number of cases since the start of the outbreak stood at 32 as of Thursday evening.
Pritzker made clear that the ban on the largest gatherings is much more than a recommendation.
We will break up events of more than 1,000 people, he said. We will take the authority that we have to make sure that those events are not happening.
It's wrong, and people should know better.
Airports, public transit and schools are not affected by the crowd size rules, Lightfoot said. Conferences, banquets, concerts and other public gatherings that draw big groups, including religious services, are, officials said.
Lightfoot added that her administration has been working with the entertainment industry, theaters, concert venues and so forth, about the guidance.
Everyone we have been talking to about the necessity of this, the science behind it, what the data is, we've had an overwhelming positive response, the mayor said. I think that people recognize this is an unusual time, and it's time for them to step up. We recognize there are going to be economic consequences.
She added, this is a time where we have an opportunity to bend the curve of the arc of this virus in a different direction, and I think people understand and appreciate why we're doing this.
Large events compromise the well-being of everybody, especially individuals over 60 and those with underlying medical conditions, Lightfoot said.
Pritzker's guidelines had an immediate impact on the state's arts and entertainment community and patrons.
Patrons arriving at Symphony Center on Thursday night for a popular Chicago Symphony Orchestra program featuring music of Gershwin and Ravel said they were surprised and disappointed it had been canceled. Bummer, said Sherry Gallagher, who described herself as a CSO season ticket holder. In a coordinated move through the League of Chicago Theaters, most of the leading Chicago theaters including Court Theater, Chicago Shakespeare Theater, Steppenwolf Theater Company and many others said they were canceling all their remaining performances of current shows, or postponing openings. Cancellations are likely to last through May 1. The situation appears to be without precedent and doubtless will cause much fiscal pain, especially for the most vulnerable companies. Chicago's famous storefront theaters, traditionally about 100 seats, are free to make their own decision, the league said, but they, too, will be under pressure to cancel. The decision also kills off the major touring productions in the loop, likely producing a knock-on effect of economic hurt. Dr. Allison Arwady, commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health, said the decision to ban gatherings of more than 1,000 people was based on data that helps predict how likely it is someone with the virus would be at an event of a certain size. We're using our local data to make these decisions, she said. That's what we will continue to do moving forward. As more cases of COVID-19, short for coronavirus disease 2019, have been diagnosed, officials have been releasing fewer details about each patient. The cases announced Thursday include the first child, a Chicago resident, along with a Chicago woman in her 40s. The child is in isolation at home, and the school has been notified, officials said, but they would provide no other information. There are 3 other new cases in Cook County, 2 women in their 70s and a man in his 50s. A Kane County man in his 70s and a McHenry County man in his 50s also have been diagnosed. While all the cases so far have been in the Chicago area, Pritzker stressed that the restrictions and recommendations unveiled Thursday apply statewide.
Don't be fooled into thinking your community is immune, he said. It is not.
Despite the other disruptions to daily life, officials continued to assure the public that Tuesday's primary elections would go on as scheduled. They encouraged as many people as possible to take advantage of early voting.
Pritzker also closed the James R. Thompson Center in the Loop to all people who don't have state business starting Monday. The Secretary of State's Driver Services facility in the lower-level concourse will remain open, he said.
Asked about the decision not to close City Hall, despite Pritzker's decision to partially close the Thompson Center, Lightfoot said, "There's no reason for us to close."
Next week's City Council meeting will go on as scheduled, though she said would be streamlined by cutting out business including ceremonial resolutions.
Pritzker and Lightfoot said the state and city are developing plans to allow some employees to work remotely.
The governor's office will remain open and running, however, Pritzker said. We will not let you down in these challenging times. State lawmakers won't return until March 24.
The announcements come a day after Lightfoot and Pritzker announced the cancellation of the city's St. Patrick's Day festivities and as governors across the country are taking similar action.
Both Pritzker and Lightfoot recommended that people who can work from home do so. Lightfoot also said Comcast will provide low-income Chicago residents with 60 days of free internet to help them work from home, she said.
Officials also reiterated the need for hand washing and other common-sense health measures.
I just gave this guidance today to my 91-year-old mother, and it applies to everyone else. If you are under the weather, if you are over 60, if you have an underlying medical condition, please stay home, Lightfoot said. All of us must exercise simply good judgment and common sense.
Other states have made similar moves on shutting down large events. In New York, Gov. Andrew Cuomo on Thursday placed restrictions on most gatherings of more than 500, while California Gov. Gavin Newsom said the state public health department's recommendation to cancel or postpone events with more than 250 people is likely to be extended beyond the end of the month.
Chicago Tribune reporters Jamie Monks, Steve Johnson, Chris Jones, Howard Reich, Doug George and Michael Phillips contributed.
D. Petrella at ChicagoTribune.com.
G. Pratt at ChicagoTribune.com.